John likes tech and lives in Indiana, you know. Kevin likes the Dodgers and talks on the radio. John plays games on Xbox and on his Nintendo, while Kevin runs around LA with his mustachio. It's the Lack of Genius podcast in your ear holes at last. They don't know they're Mars from Venus, that's why it's the Lack of Genius podcast. That theme song.
And it's good.
Oh, well, thank you.
It's so good that this episode is about it.
Yeah, we're taking direct inspiration from the theme song.
We are.
We don't want to sound like liars. And in the song, there's a couple specific. This is a Lack of Genius podcast, by the way. I'm Kevin, and that's John.
Yeah.
And
I suppose we should say who we are.
Yeah, just to be friendly, say hello. We don't want to ignore you listening. Thank you for being here.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a few lines in that song, and there's two direct ones that we feel like we need to kind of prove our worth about, prove our worth on. And those two lines, you know what, John? I actually have a surprise for you.
Yeah?
Those two lines are Kevin likes the Dodgers. There it is. And John plays games on Xbox. Kevin likes the Dodgers. John plays games on Xbox. So what are we quizzing each other on this week, John?
The Dodgers and Xbox.
Yep. Kevin likes the Dodgers, just in case you forgot. And what does John like? John plays games on Xbox. That's going to get old real fast, but I'm going to, in case we lose track of what we're talking about, I have those little clips ready to go to remind people. In fact, if you already forgot, John plays games on Xbox. So, and if you forgot about what I like, Kevin likes the Dodgers.
And for those of you that are just listening, and that might be a hint towards something in the future here.
Ooh, a little tease.
Yeah. Kevin's wearing a Dodgers hat.
Yes.
And if I was thinking ahead, I have an Xbox 360 Mountain Dew beanie. I think it was from like when the 360 launched, like Mountain Dew was doing this thing where, I ended up getting a beanie.
That's great. You know what?
There's a pile of hats behind me, and I think it's somewhere in there.
If you want to go dig through that right now, I'm not going to stop you.
I'll try and find it for the picture.
So there you go. So yeah, it's funny because I'll be honest, I did my hair today with product, and I walked in and I was like, well, I gotta wear a Dodger hat if I'm talking about the Dodgers today because Kevin likes the Dodgers. So I just wanted to prove that, Well, so that's what we're doing. In case you're new to the show, we each make a quiz on these things. So I made a 5-question quiz about the Dodgers that John is going to have to answer. John made a 5-question quiz about the Xbox that I am going to have to answer. And if you want to take the quiz as well, you can do so at lackofgenius.com or just play along here. So we'll get into that. We do have a section that we call the tidy up section that we get into just before the quiz. This is where if we made any errors on the previous episode, we like to tidy them up. We don't clean them up, we tidy them up. A little feather duster. And so you had mentioned that Jim Davis is an alum of Ball State. And my question for you was, is that the sports broadcaster? And you're like, no, Kevin, you are stupid. You're so dumb. That's the creator of Garfield. Okay, so what I realized, and I was like, who am I thinking of? I was thinking of Jim Gray. I don't know if you know that name, John, but he is a sports broadcaster. His most famous thing, the thing that I remembered him for and that I ended up finding while researching him is that in the 1999 Major League Baseball All-Star Game, he interviewed Pete Rose live on the field. Pete Rose, of course, banned from baseball for life for betting on baseball. And he had made what they called the all-century team. And Jim Gray kind of grilled him right there on live TV, trying to get him to admit to the fact that he betted on baseball because he didn't. And Pete Rose gave it right back to him and says, I'm kind of surprised that you're doing this, man. I can't believe you're taking this great moment. And I don't know where I stand on it. I think Jim Gray did a great job as a journalist, but maybe it wasn't the right time and place. And then 5 years later, Pete Rose did write a book and did admit to betting on baseball. So he needed to do it on his time. Yeah. Anyways, that was my tidy up for this episode.
I don't think I have anything from last week's episode or anything, but I do want to shout out the fact that we've had nearly 300 listens.
It's a round of applause right there.
Yeah.
And that, yeah, sure. I'm proud of that. And I know you're proud of that, but also that's a round of applause to the people listening. And we appreciate that. There's, we look at the stats a little bit and we see that there are people who are listening on, we don't know where you're like, I'm not looking at you right now and saying, oh, look, you're listening to my podcast. Great. There's people listening week to week and that feels good. And we appreciate that. So thank you for being part of it.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, this has been fun. I love doing it. And I'm just thankful that we actually have people that want to listen to us. I mean, we're not forcing anyone.
Yeah.
I do want to shout out to someone though. Your former roommate.
Yes. Will Patch.
Yeah, Will Patch. He's commented a few times on our Instagram posts and everything. He when he took the quizzes for last week's episode, he said what scores he got, and so
what did he get? 3 out of 5 on both of them?
I think he got all of them for Muncie, and then like guessed on the Lomita and got like either a 3 or a 4.
Yeah, when I went to Manchester, which is where John and I met, Manchester College in North Manchester, Indiana, Will Patch was my roommate for the semester I was there. And Will is a really smart dude. He even though he's never been to Lomita, I assume, and doesn't know anything about it, I could see him being real deductive about it and figuring it out. So and that was going to be my thought is, much like Will and anyone else who's listening and doing so on a regular basis, now's the time to reach out to us. And like, if you have a suggestion for a topic, man, even if, you want to be the genius, pitch yourself as a guest or just like say, hey, you should do a quiz on this or give us some feedback. What's working, what's not, we can take it. But now's the time. We have a small but loyal audience and we're enjoying that. So glad you're a part of it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe at some point we'll do a live one, we've already talked about a name for it.
Yes,
I like the idea of a log jam.
Yes, so. Log jam, because lack of genius, LOG, lack of genius. That we haven't referred to it as that a lot, but yeah, we're the Log Podcast. The Log Jam, Log Jam 2020. Oh wait, that was last year. Log Jam 2021. And just one more note that I wanted to make was John plays games on Xbox and then Kevin likes the Dodgers. So that's what we're quizzing each other on. Let's get into quiz time, shall we?
Yeah, we shall. And you never hear this, but we always have to try to remember who asked first last time. So we can just, rotate it.
Before we go live, we're like,
and when we figured out Kevin did it last time. So I'm going to ask the first question here. And I actually made it be the question that I teased you with last week.
Yeah, you're such a tease, John.
What was the nickname for the original controller for the Xbox?
Okay.
The Duke, John Wayne, Clippy, or Cyborg?
I'll tell you right now that I want it to be Clippy. Like Clippy, I haven't launched it, and I don't know if I ever will. But I've been working on a children's project, and that sounds like it needs to be like a paperclip who runs around and spreads the awareness of keeping your papers tidy. Clippy, the paperclip. Cyborg, you put on there. That seems like it would make sense in a virtual world. I think that was my dog howling, by the way. Pardon you, Coconut. But I feel like Cyborg is maybe trying to throw me off. I want to say it's either going to be John Wayne or the Duke. If it's Clippy, I'll be happy. I want to go with John Wayne, and I don't know why. I don't even have a lot of logic other than that's a real person, and I'm just going to choose it. I'm choosing John Wayne.
Incorrect. It's the Duke.
It's the Duke. You know a lot about this.
John
you know why?
John plays games on Xbox.
Let's try to time that right. The Duke is the right answer. Dang it. I was so close.
Yeah, I put John Wayne in there to try to maybe steer you towards the Duke. But I don't know. Do you remember back in the day in like Word and stuff?
Yes. Yeah.
Clippy. Yeah. That's why I put it in there.
That's what came to mind. I just totally ripped off that idea.
But no, the original controller was nicknamed the Duke. I mean, it was that big, beefy one. It actually fit my hands incredibly well.
Yeah, I bet. You're all 6'7" of you.
Yeah. They made the controller and stuff smaller after that one to try and actually sell better in Japan. Like, consider the PlayStation controller, how it's designed and stuff. So the newer controllers are more like that, which I'm not a fan of. That's one of the reasons why I don't like PlayStation. Is the controller.
Interesting. Which makes sense if you have relatively large hands. And what's the word? The ratio of hand to John is appropriate, but your hands are larger than most other than 5'10" Kevin.
Yeah.
Wow. And one thing I should say is, man, I really don't know a lot about video games. So this is going to be real interesting. I haven't looked ahead at any of the questions. I'm not trying to lower expectations, but I want to pull off something good here, even though I missed the first one already.
Well, we'll see if I missed your first one. So
okay. So you ready for it?
I am.
Okay. Which of the following is not a former name of the Dodgers from their time in Brooklyn? So the Dodger franchise went through many names. Which one was not one of their former names? Is it the Robins, the Grays, the Trolleys, or the Atlantics?
Atlantics makes sense to be called, for the Dodgers have been called that just because of being on the Atlantic coast.
Mm-hmm. Now, your knowledge of the Dodgers, I don't know how far it stretches, but you probably knew they were from Brooklyn.
Yeah, I knew that they were from Brooklyn.
Okay.
I'm going to assume that they were called the Grays at one point because, gray is a part of their uniform colors.
Mm-hmm.
Robins, I can see that making sense.
Mm-hmm.
Trolleys, I've never associated Trolleys with Brooklyn.
Mm.
So I'm going to go with Trolleys.
That's your final answer, Trolleys.
Yep.
You got it. Now, what's interesting about that, good job, John. I was hoping you had a little knowledge of this because I was hoping Trolleys would throw you off. The reason they are called the Dodgers is because their original name was the Trolley Dodgers, meaning these are pedestrians on the street. In like the late 1800s, the trolleys increased their speed. And so people were like literally dodging trolleys. And so that is why they only went 2 years as the Trolley Dodgers, 1911 and 1912, and then they dropped it and just became the Dodgers. And they went through a bunch of names. Yeah, Atlantics, Grays, Bridegrooms, the Grooms, the Superbas, which I didn't even know what that word meant, but it was like a circus. It was like a popular circus at the time. And the really interesting thing to me was that they never, for most of the years they were in Brooklyn, at least in the early days, they never had an official name. It was literally just a nickname. They didn't have their names on their jerseys. It was just nicknames that like the press would use. And so you might have one article that calls them the Dodgers and one article that calls them the Robins and one article that calls them the Superbas, but their only legal name was the Brooklyn Baseball Club. Until a certain year that I don't have in front of me. But yeah, that's a little bit of the history of the name of the Dodgers.
Interesting. That's cool.
Great job. Good deductive reasoning, man. All right, so let's get into
John plays games on Xbox.
that one.
So I actually, when I was writing all my questions, I didn't have a true or false question.
Okay.
And then I'm like, I got to have a true and false question.
You do. It wouldn't be you without one.
So I made a true or false question.
There it is. Yep.
True or false? This year marks the 20th anniversary of the original Xbox.
Okay. This year is 2021, which would mean that the original Xbox launched in 2001. Seems relatively appropriate. Seems like the general timeline. Was it around in the late 90s? I don't think so. Here's my train of thought. That their 20th anniversary either just passed or is coming up very soon, but isn't actually this year. So I am going to choose false. This year is not the 20th anniversary. I'm choosing false.
Incorrect.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I believe the exact date is November 19th is the 20th anniversary.
Right at the end of the year.
But yeah, no, the original Xbox came out in 2001.
Pretty amazing. Wow. And you know what? I'm going to be honest. I thought it was older, but I guess that makes sense if you think about it. When I was thinking about what I was doing in 1999, I was like, there was no Xbox around. So yeah, 20 makes sense. I'm getting agitated, man. 0 for 2. This is not a good start. John, what's the record again? You've won now, what, 3 episodes? 4 episodes?
I think 3.
3. I've won 1, and we've tied.
Yeah.
And we're going on that trend, man. But that's all right. I'm here for the fun of it.
Real-time tidy up.
Yeah, bring it on.
November 15th, not the 19th.
We should have, we got to get that trending. # real-time tidy up. That's like we can need like a red alert sound, like real time tidy up. Nice job, John. Way to make that a thing. You ready for number 2 on the Dodgers?
Yeah.
Okay, on the current roster, how many former MVP award winners do the Dodgers have? Is it 1, 2, 3, or 4?
So one question I do have
Mm-hmm.
is the managers and things like that considered part of the roster?
Oh, good question. Yeah, no, just the players. And as a clarification to listeners and maybe to you, John, there is an MVP award handed out at the end of every season. One to the American League Best Player and one to the National League Best Player. So, how many former MVP award winners do the Dodgers have on their current roster? Players 1, 2, 3, or 4?
I mean, I'm pretty sure the Cubs have a couple.
Yeah, they have Chris Bryant. I know one. Rizzo won 1 year, right?
I think so.
That's at least 2. Baez, I don't
Yeah.
think has ever won, but he's come close.
Yeah. I mean, and the caliber of the Dodgers are up there with the Cubs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Dodgers did just recently win in the last couple of years, right?
Yeah, they just won last year, 2020. I know this
Kevin likes the Dodgers.
because of that.
So I mean, with the fact that the Dodgers won last year, that would imply that they've most likely got at least one, which, 0 is not an option.
Yeah, this is true.
And I feel like they won a few years before that. So I'm just going to go with 2.
2 former MVPs on the current roster. That's your final answer?
Final answer.
Sorry, bro. It's the big one. It's 4.
4.
They have 4. That is, you mentioned the word caliber. They have an amazing roster. They're widely heralded as the best roster in baseball right now, even though they don't have the best record in the league. But they did win last year. They're expected to win again this year. I mean, I shouldn't say expected, but they are the heavy favorites. They've been in 3 of the last 17, 18, 19, 20, 3 of the last 4 World Series, but they lost the first 2, including losing to the Astros in their cheating scandal, which, a lot of us are bitter about, but it's neither here nor there. They won in 2020. They didn't win that year. And to get to the actual question, the 4 current MVPs on the roster are Cody Bellinger, who won in 2019. He's the most recent one. Mookie Betts won the AL MVP in 2018 when he was with the Red Sox. Now he's with the Dodgers. Clayton Kershaw, who's the heart and soul of the Dodgers, he won MVP and Cy Young, which is the best pitcher of the league in 2014. And then their most recent signing was Albert Pujols, who's one of the greatest hitters to ever play the game of baseball, and did a surprise signing with the Dodgers. He won the MVP 3 times, 2005, 2008, 2009. He was just unbelievable in those years. And so, they have 4.
Yeah, I just took a look at the standings, and it's a good thing I'm not a fair weather fan of the Cubs.
The Cubs. Okay, so here's an interesting
They're
fact.
10 games behind.
The Cubs no-hit the Dodgers, and we talked about this. We maybe even talked about it on the show.
Mhm.
After that game, they lost 10 games in a row. The Dodgers won 10 games in a row.
Yeah.
And then the Cubs are unfortunately kind of going downhill. It's a bummer.
Yeah.
I do like the Cubs, but not as much as the Dodgers. All right, let's bring on Xbox. Ooh.
Which actor helped launch the Xbox? So he
Wow.
was on stage when Microsoft unveiled the Xbox.
No way. Okay.
Jim Carrey,
Uh-huh.
Dwayne Johnson,
Yeah.
Vin Diesel,
Yep.
or Chris Pratt.
Yes. Wow. You got a comedian in Jim Carrey. You got a former wrestler turned actor, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. You got a super action movie star, Vin Diesel, and you got a hilarious dude who's now moved on to action films and whatnot, Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
I would guess not Chris Pratt because he didn't really get on the radar until Parks and Rec in the, I guess late 2000s, late aughts. Jim Carrey doesn't strike me as someone who would be plugged into the Xbox world. I am between Dwayne Johnson and Vin Diesel. I also wonder if it's one of them, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but maybe you chose the other one because it's like, let me choose another buff guy. I want to say that the Fast and Furious movies had just kind of started around that time and were a big deal. And I just realized that Vin Diesel and Chris Pratt are both in the Guardians of the Galaxy, which is fun because Vin Diesel is Baby Groot. I'm choosing Vin Diesel. Let's do it. Vin Diesel, John, where are we at?
Incorrect.
Oh my God. Come on. Just put me
It's
out
The
of my
Rock.
misery. It was The Rock.
It was The Rock.
Kevin, what's wrong with you? Wow, The Rock. Okay, what do you know about that?
Not a whole lot other than that he just was. He was more big into the wrestling side of things at that time. 2001.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was starting to go into movies and stuff. I mean, he was on an episode of Star Trek.
Nice.
But yeah, no, it was Dwayne Johnson.
Dwayne The Rock Johnson, only known as The Rock at that time, was a huge deal in his sport and transcended the sport. Everyone knew who The Rock was, the people's elbow and the what was the eyebrow. I don't know. Like, he did all these things, and he's somehow launched an insanely successful second career as an actor. He is one of the greatest entertainers of like this millennium of these 2000s. If you think about it, man, he's really got mad props to that man, and he's going to be president one day.
And off topic slightly, but only because you mentioned Vin Diesel as being, Fast and the Furious movies. Do you know what the biggest movie that he was in at the beginning of his career?
Ooh, so this would be like before. If I guess it, do I get a point?
A half point?
I have no idea. It's funny. I was going to say The Pacifier, which was that one that he was in. But, I'd be super curious to know. I don't have a good guess. What is it?
Saving Private Ryan.
Really? A movie I've never seen, I'm ashamed to admit. But so was he in it as one of the dudes in who saved Private Ryan, or what?
Yeah.
Wow, spoiler alert. That's cool. Good to know.
And to be honest, I'm not sure I've ever watched that movie all the way through.
Okay.
I've tried watching it a few times that I know of where I've fallen asleep at the beginning and woken up at the credits.
Got it. Well, all right. When I come out to visit you and we play hide and seek in your yard and do all the fun stuff we have planned, we're gonna have a movie night and we're gonna watch Saving Private Ryan. Okay.
We can do that.
All right. Well, let's get your next Dodger question up. You are 1 for 2. I am 0 for 3. Let's see if you gain some more ground on me. True or false? Here's my true or false question. Babe Ruth played for the Dodgers. True or false?
I mean, I know he played for the Yankees, and that's where he made it big, being the Sultan of SWAT and all that. But part of me wants to say, I think he was he grew up in Brooklyn, or am I just making that up?
I don't know.
But I mean, he seems like the person that would have just gone to whichever team was paying him the most.
Yeah, I mean, he was the greatest player of the time,
right?
For sure.
I mean, and the Yankees have always bought their teams, bought championships. So I'm gonna say, even though it may have not been called the Dodgers at the time,
yeah, the Dodgers organization, yeah,
right, the Brooklyn baseball team.
There you go. Yeah,
I'm gonna go with true.
You're saying true. Babe Ruth played for the Dodgers. True. Sorry, it is false. It is false. What I was going to put is Babe Ruth was once a Dodger, was how I was going to word it, because he was once a Dodger, but he was a coach. He coached 1 year at the end of his career. He was the first base coach for the Brooklyn Dodgers in, I think I have the year here somewhere. What year would that have been? 1938. So he was already retired. He started his career with the Boston Red Sox, and then was traded to the Yankees. And for many years, there was the curse of the Bambino because the Red Sox didn't win a championship until 2004, which was almost 100 years later. I wasn't aware that Babe Ruth had any Dodger affiliation until I went to a game and got a Babe Ruth bobblehead. And I just set up all my bobbleheads in my new apartment, and I have a Babe Ruth in a Brooklyn Dodger uniform. And to be honest, I like it because it's unique, but I don't love it because I'm like, Babe Ruth is an icon, but he's not a Dodger,
Right.
Yeah, he did 1 year as a coach, and he didn't get along with the manager, and so the next year the manager fired him, and which is crazy to think about. But I guess he just didn't re-sign him. But
right.
Yeah, so there you go. There's your Babe Ruth knowledge.
Okay.
So you're 1 for 3 now, and I'm 0 for 3.
Yep.
So despite the fact that
John plays games on Xbox
and that
Kevin likes the Dodgers,
it turns out that we don't know a whole lot about those specific things.
That's true.
On the other end, but there's still time to make up. So let's see what we got.
Question number 4. How many generations of the Xbox have there been?
Wow.
I'm not talking about how many different Xboxes have there been.
Okay.
But how many generations?
Okay.
3, 5, 4, or 6.
3, 5, 4, or 6. And and I get your clarification, but at the same time, I'm also like, well, what is? So, I mean, I don't need you to explain it to me, but I'll just kind of talk it through in my head that they're clearly within a generation. They made multiple versions of the Xbox, is what it sounds like. Yeah,
Right.
and so we've established 20 years. So, like, you could do some simple math, and you could say, okay, if it's 5, then every more or less every 4 years they were coming out with a new generation, or would it be every 5 years, or with more frequency and every 3 years? Oh, this just feels like a throw at the dartboard, to be honest. I mean, look, there's a lot of marketing. There's a lot of having to keep up with a lot of the competition of PlayStation and Nintendos and Wiis and all that. So for that reason, there may be a need for frequency. So I don't think it's 3, but there's also a sense of desperation if you do it too many times. I'm eyeing 4. I've just selected 4. That's my answer.
Correct.
Finally!
Yep, there's been 4 generations, the 4th one being released just last year.
Okay.
With the Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S. The one before that was the Xbox One, which also had the Xbox One X, Xbox One S.
Okay.
I know it gets kind of confusing.
I know, but that's interesting because so the most recent one just came out, and the one before that was called the Xbox One.
Yeah.
Which you would think was like the first Xbox.
Right.
But that's not
exactly.
The case.
No, because the second generation was the Xbox 360.
Yes, and I recall this name very well. Okay,
Yeah.
so they then subtracted 359 from that and came up with the Xbox One.
Yeah, I think the idea with the Xbox One was that they were trying to have it be your main entertainment box.
Gotcha.
Your one box.
Yes.
Because you can plug your cable box into it and then have it go into the TV, to your TV then.
I see.
And they had like a TV guide built into the Xbox and all that.
It's like the Xbox all-in-one, the one
Yeah.
there. Yeah, I get it. Okay. And the first one was what? Just the Xbox?
Yeah, just the Xbox.
Wow, I'm feeling so educated, man. Do you have a favorite game on Xbox?
There's a franchise that I like.
Okay.
And that's the Assassin's Creed franchise.
Oh, gotcha.
I do also enjoy the campaign for Halo.
Okay, yes.
Not so much the multiplayer, but that's just because when Halo 2 came out, Joel Waggy and I...
Friend from Manchester. Uh-huh.
I pre-ordered it, and then we spent pretty much 24 hours straight playing that game.
Wow, literally.
To beat the game, yeah.
Uh-huh. Did you eat food in between there?
Yeah, we did.
Just a bunch of Doritos and Mountain Dew?
I don't honestly remember because that was like 2005, 2006, somewhere around there.
Gotcha.
So
I'm realizing as you're explaining this, I do have Xbox experience, and it is playing Halo, and I was and would still be very terrible at it. I remember it was when I was in college, and I was like tutoring/mentoring this high school student, and so when we would finish our homework, I would play Xbox with them. Because like his mom wanted somebody like a male role model to kind of do things that he likes and get him to do fun things. And I hated doing it, but I was like, well, this kid wants to play Xbox. I shouldn't say I hated it. I'm not video game oriented. I love video games. I just I'm not oriented with them. So anyways, that's my experience. Okay, let's test your Dodger knowledge with question 4. Of the 5 times a home run has been hit completely out of Dodger Stadium, that means over the outfield pavilions, how many of them have been by a Dodger? And just to clarify, this isn't just a home run. This is out of the park. Dodger Stadium is known for an iconic pavilion that's very deep out in the outfield. It's very hard to hit it out of there. So how many of the 5 times in history that it's been left the pavilion have been by a Dodger player, like on the roster playing for the Dodgers? 0, 1, 3, or 4?
Part of me just wants to needle you a little bit about being a Dodgers fan and just say 0. But I feel like it's had to have happened at least once.
They've been playing there since, 1962, I think. 1962. I'll verify that at some point, but approximately around that time.
So 60 to 70 years worth of play.
Mm-hmm.
That pales in comparison to the Cubs or the Red Sox.
It does, yes, it does. They do. Those are the 2 oldest fields, Fenway and Wrigley, and Dodger Stadium is the 3rd oldest. To be fair, it's
Only because the Yankees built a new one.
yeah, they did. Yeah. When they built Dodger Stadium, it was the first like modern stadium. And the goal was to have every seat be a good seat because but prior to that, they just kind of were haphazardly putting seats and pillars and things like that. That's part of why they rebuilt Yankee Stadium to make the viewing better.
I'm going to go with 3.
3 Dodgers have hit it over the pavilion. Sorry, dude. It isn't 0, but it is only 1. Only 1 Dodger.
I almost did 1.
Yeah. Yep. 1 Dodger, and it's one of my favorite all-time Dodgers, Mike Piazza. Being a kid coming up in the 90s, Mike Piazza was a huge
I remember
deal.
that name.
Yeah, he played in the mid-90s, and he won like Rookie of the Year, and I don't know that he won MVP. I remember he won an All-Star Game MVP. But I don't recall if I was watching that game live because I can see it because I've watched replays. But yeah, he crushed one in 1997. He hit it out. Now, the other 4 times it happened, Willie Stargell, if you know baseball, you know that name. But if you don't, he was a Pittsburgh Pirate. He did it twice. He did it in 1969. He was the first to do it in 1973. Then it was Mike Piazza in 97. So it was a 20-year hiatus. Mark McGwire, with his roided up arms, did it 2 years later. I like Mark McGwire now, but he was on steroids, but he hit it out. And then I'm pretty proud of this one because I was at this game. Giancarlo Stanton, who's one of the biggest power hitters of the last 5, 6, 7 years. He's now on the Yankees, but he was on the Marlins. I remember I was at this game with my cousin and he crushes it. And it's a no doubter, it's like, oh my God. And I'm watching this thing go and I'm like, that just hit the top of the pavilion and it rolled out into the parking lot. And I'm literally, people are like, oh, boo, he hit a home run. And I'm literally saying like, you guys, we just witnessed history right now. Like I'm saying that to no one in particular. Like that's only happened 4 other times. And that's one of my prouder moments of being at a Dodger game. 1962, by the way, was when Dodger Stadium opened up. So
next year marks the 60th anniversary.
Yeah, how about that? I didn't put that together. It's funny because I remembered like the 50th happening and all that. But yeah, that's going to be pretty exciting. Okay, well, we're tied. We're both 1 for 4.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, John. Oh my gosh, pressure's on.
So we've already talked about Halo a little bit.
We have, and
and that is one of the biggest game franchises on the Xbox.
And is it because we do know that
John plays games on Xbox?
So this is one of the games that you play.
It is. I do enjoy it.
Okay.
But what platform was it originally designed for exclusively?
Interesting.
The Nintendo GameCube.
Okay.
The PlayStation 2, which both came out around the same time as the Xbox. Windows XP. Or Mac OS.
Wow. I mean, it could be way out of left field because I don't think it would be a Nintendo GameCube. It's not a Nintendo style game. Mac OS would be very strange because Xbox is owned by Microsoft. It doesn't mean it's not, and that's why Windows XP jumps out to me, but that almost seems like too obvious an answer. PlayStation 2, to me, when I think about video game consoles, like PlayStation 2 and Xbox have sort of similar styled games based on my limited knowledge. Oh, man. I really want to get this just to put the pressure on you for the next question. I really want to get it. I'm really tempted to choose Mac OS because it's so bizarre, because it's so like, what? It was designed for Mac and then it went to Microsoft? But I also feel like that's going to be a dumb choice. Oh, man, I shouldn't have shared my thoughts because now if I choose something else and it's Mac OS, I'm going to be mad. You know what? I'm having a change of heart at the last minute. I think of PlayStation as its biggest competitor, so I'm going to choose PlayStation 2. And it was like a big deal that it existed on both. So I'm choosing PlayStation 2.
Incorrect.
Oh, man. Don't even tell me what the right answer is. Let's just move on.
Mac OS.
Oh, Kevin, you need to go on a timeout, sir.
Bungie was the company that made Halo originally. And their first big game that they made was called Marathon, which was on the Mac only. It was one of the first kind of bigger games for the Mac.
Cool.
And so then they started developing Halo to be on the Mac. And then Microsoft was like, hey, why don't you come put this on our new system that we haven't launched yet? And if memory serves, game developers will have developer kits before, the systems come out, if they're launch titles and stuff.
Okay.
And from my understanding, if I remember correctly, they were using Max as the developer kits for the original Xbox.
How about that? Wow.
And so it wasn't hard for Bungie to do that, to switch it over to be able to work on the Xbox.
Wow. All right, John. Gosh, I can't believe I did that. I'm really, really rooting hard for you to miss this question. Let's see. Is John going to get the win or are we going to tie? It all comes down to this question. According to conventional wisdom, okay? Mm-hmm. So this isn't like a proven fact, but according to conventional wisdom, the Dodgers are said to have invented what form of celebration? A, champagne spraying. B, the high five. C, the dog pile. Or D, Gatorade showers.
I'm going to go with champagne spraying.
Champagne spraying. So a team wins a championship or wins a series and they go and they spray champagne over each other. That's what you're going with?
Yep.
Did he tie? Or did we tie? I should have said no.
We did tie.
Sorry, man. So I did learn about champagne spraying that was first started by, I don't know race car driving, but somebody won. So it wasn't like NASCAR, but someone won a big event and they always had a glass of champagne at the end and would drink it. And one time somebody shook it up and started spraying everybody and it caught on from there. It is the high five, which is pretty amazing because the high five is such a natural part of everyday interaction. It feels like that to think that here's the story behind it. 1977, Dusty Baker, one of the he actually is still a manager. He manages the Astros, unfortunately, but a great guy in baseball history. He was a Dodger. He hit his 30th home run on October 2nd, 1977. This was a big deal because it was the first time ever that 4 players on one team hit 30 or more home runs. It was a huge deal. So he's rounding the plate. The guy on deck is named Glenn Burke. And here's how it was described in a story from the time. It was a wild, triumphant moment and a good omen as the Dodgers headed to the playoffs. Burke, waiting on deck, thrust his hand enthusiastically over his head to greet his friend at the plate, Baker. Baker, not knowing what to do, smacked it. And then Baker says, quote, his hand was up in the air and he was arching way back. So I reached up and hit his hand. It seemed like the thing to do. And it caught on from there. And so, the reason that I worded it as conventional wisdom is because there's not a lot of there's no written history of the high five. There was a college basketball game a couple years after this 1977 one where they claim they started it. And, this is before social media. And so they very well could have done it without the knowledge of knowing about this one. Right. And there's even a 30 for 30 ESPN documentary about the high five. And they come to the conclusion that this was the originator. It's funny because this was the last question I came up with. And I had to do some research on this because I had always heard this fact. But I thought it was one of those things that my mom told me when I was a kid, because we were Dodger fans, the Dodgers invented the high five. My mom also told me that my dad invented the spike in football. So and I believed that up until young adulthood when I was wait a minute. My dad didn't play football. But it turns out, as I did my research, the Dodgers actually are credited with inventing the high five. So there you go.
Well, and I can tell you that it's most likely not the Indianapolis 500 where they did the champagne spraying.
Why is that? Why do you say that?
Because they drink milk.
They do the milk. Yeah. It was I was an Indy car race or something. I don't know.
It's possible.
Well, you know what? We do not deserve a high five right now or a champagne shower because we both went 1 for 5.
I guess we proved the name of the show.
And I feel good about that. We definitely lacked genius on our particular subjects. That was pretty eye-opening. But I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we proved the theme song to be true, and I'm glad we proved our own lack of genius. And remember, those listening, you can always take these quizzes before the episode airs. The episodes come out every Thursday, and the quizzes go up. The quizzes are generally up by the weekend before, so you can hop on anytime. And
if you become a member of our Patreon,
yes,
you actually get the episode a day early.
Woo! So you can impress everybody by knowing the answers to the quiz when they get it on Thursday. You're like, I already know the answer. Yeah, we do have a Patreon up if you feel like contributing to it to help us with some expenses and to try to get this thing continually launched. We are on all the social medias, and we appreciate any clicks, likes, follows, retweets, whatever the kids are doing these days. Just do them all. We'd appreciate that.
I've got a challenge for everybody this week.
Ooh, I like it.
I mean, I know last week we talked about trying to get everyone in Lomita to grow celery.
Yeah. Do we have any update on that?
I don't have any. I mean, you're the one that's closest to Lomita, so I need you to go around and see if there's a celery growing.
I'll do that.
But if everybody listening shares this with one other person.
Oh, John, you're good. Yeah. Just share it. Say, hey, you know what? This is my friend John. He does a podcast. Choose your favorite episode. It doesn't even have to be the most recent one. Say, you should listen to this episode. Hey, you kind of like Survivor. You should listen to this episode.
Exactly.
Do you have that in you? I'm asking rhetorically right now, you listening. Do you have it in you to just tell one person about this podcast? I believe you do, and we'd appreciate it very much. And on our next episode, we are stepping into something historic in the Lack of Genius podcast.
Exactly.
We're going to have our first guest. And this man is a man that I work with. His name is Julian Garcia. He's a great dude. He is an expert on Dungeons and Dragons. D&D, baby, a game I've never played. John, you said you've played it a couple times back in the day.
Yep.
And I would like to preface that I don't think Julian would love me calling him an expert on Dungeons and Dragons. He does play it. He organizes a group. We had a conversation at work the other day, and with me never having an interest in playing the game ever in my life, at the end of the conversation, I was like, I want to play every day now.
But I mean, there's a lot of people that actually play Dungeons and Dragons. It's not this little.
Yeah.
Indianapolis actually has one of the largest D&D related conventions.
Really?
Yeah, and it's not just D&D, but all tabletop games, and that's Gen Con.
Well, when I come out to visit you to play hide and seek and watch Saving Private Ryan, I'm going to have to bring Julian with me, and we're all going to have to go to this D&D convention together.
And he's going to be the one creating all the questions.
Yes.
And Kevin and I are going to be answering the same questions.
Exactly. So we'll be going head to head with the same questions.
Yep.
We are the only show that makes the guest do work to come on the show. I checked in with him the other day. I was like, Julian, if 10 questions is too much to make, you're my guinea pig. Can you let me know how hard or easy that is? Anywho, if there's one thing we learned this episode, it's
John plays games on Xbox.
And if there's two things that we learned this episode, it's
Kevin likes the Dodgers.
And Kevin does not know Xbox, and John does not know the Dodgers would be the third and fourth thing that we learned.
Yeah.
So with that, we're out of here. We're failures. Goodbye.
See you next week.
John likes tech and lives in Indiana, you know. Kevin likes the Dodgers and talks on the radio. John plays games on Xbox and on his Nintendo, while Kevin runs around LA with his mustachio. It's the Lack of Genius podcast in your ear holes at last. They don't know they're Mars from Venus, that's why it's the Lack of Genius podcast.